Grant Amato is best known for his work in the 2019 annihilation of his family, as well as for his rugged good looks. Amongst his lesser-known works are stealing medication from his job as a nurse, causing his termination, stealing money from all of his family members, stealing money from friends, don't have to be his friends, anyone's friends will do. Grant was the youngest of three boys to Margaret and Chad Amato, and they lived in Florida. Grant's oldest brother, Jason, had a family of his own and no longer lived in the family home. Cody, Grant's other brother, and Grant still lived in the family home, which was an arrangement that, even though they were adults, seemed to work for everyone. Grant's brother Cody was an anesthesiologist, which was what Grant was hoping to be one day. By all accounts, Chad, their father, was the disciplinarian. He was a little bit rigid. He kind of ran a tight ship, where Margaret was more of the touch, the soft touch. Margaret and Grant seemed to have a pretty good relationship. She was kind of a confidant to him, an emotional support. And Grant and Cody were incredibly close, closer than even most best friends, most brothers. They were like partners in life. They had future plans together. They just had a bond. Cody, along with Grant's parents, were incredibly supportive through Grant's tougher times. And recently he had fallen on tougher times because he had lost his job. He was stealing Propanol, and the explanation that he offered for this when confronted was that he was administering it to patients that did not appear to him to be adequately relaxed. After being terminated from his job, the Amatos kind of carried him through that snafu and made sure that no legal action was taken against him and that his permanent record was not affected by this. During this time of unemployment and uncertainty, Grant had acquired a very expensive lifestyle, considering he rarely left his room. See, during this time, Grant had fallen in love with a cam model. She was in Bulgaria. Her name was Sylvie. She was incredibly beautiful, of course, because Grant has high standards. And the thing with this is that it's incredibly expensive. So Grant's parents had spent at least $200,000 paying his bills for this. Now, understandably, as most families would, they thought that 2-3 sit-down conversations about this would put an end to it, but that was not the case. So they tried several things to kind of steer Grant in another direction, or at least maybe take his mind off this particular obsession of his at this moment. And Cody financed a lavish trip to Japan with Grant and some friends. They chose Japan because of their love of anime. And during this trip, Grant did something that's so Grant. He stole the credit card of one of Cody's friends and went to an internet cafe and contacted Sylvie. Of course. Another thing that the Amatos had tried was they sent Grant to live with his aunt, who had kind of a structured lifestyle, and they thought maybe the change of atmosphere would help him overcome these issues he's been having. He stole from her, and she was keen to press charges, but his parents paid her back and convinced her not to do so. Grant seems to have been born as a terrible person who was very self-indulgent and didn't think twice of his indulgence being something that he himself could not afford. In this case, that indulgence was a virtual relationship that was developing mostly in his mind. And as surprising as this will be to you, Grant was also an avid gamer. Grant had an online persona as a cool and wealthy guy. The thing that sets Grant apart from other cases that on their face look very similar to this is that Grant is not an incel, an involuntary celibate. Grant didn't really seem, he had had a few girlfriends. Grant did not seem to have an issue with the opposite sex. Grant had an issue with not being able to do or get what he wanted to do or get. When his family's unconditional, unwavering support reached its limit finally, Grant snuck up behind his mother as she was sitting at her computer playing Candy Crush and shot her in the back of the head. He then killed his father, and then he laid in wait for his brother Cody to come home from work. He killed Cody, and then he positioned the bodies in such a way that he thought it would look like an unaliving slash self-deletion at Cody's hands, just to use ridiculous, acceptable internet terminology. He then used his father's dead hand to access his fingerprint, to access his phone and his credit cards, and went to a local hotel, got online, and contacted Sylvie. This fingerprint detail was kind of a gruesome point of interest in this case, which, though understandable, is also, I'm not sure what else one would expect Grant to do. This tracks. He's already done all this. Why isn't he going to use his dad's dead hand to get his money to do what he wants to do? Within 24 hours, Grant was located by authorities and he was brought in for an interview, during which Grant was incredibly relaxed. It was like he was catching up with old friends. He was very forthcoming about his recent issues and unabashedly spoke about his relationship with this cam girl and the amount of money that he had spent on her, and whose money it was, not his. And at some point, hours into this interview, one of the detectives said to him, "Don't you wonder why you're here?" And that's when things got a little shaky for Grant. I don't know if you've heard Grant's voice, but it is as expected.
Would come up to me, and he'd make me feel like he'd try and use things and word things to make me feel guilty, so that I would, do everything that I can, get a job.
Grant has the rare double whammy of a face made for radio and a voice made for sign language. The next day, Grant was arrested, and he has been incarcerated ever since. He went to trial and was found guilty by a jury of his peers. Grant pled not guilty, but did not take the stand, and it is of note that Grant Amato, who annihilated his entire family for what most would consider to be no reason at all, cried real tears during certain points of his trial, which means that this man, who committed these horrible crimes and resembles a cartoon alien, is still more human than Sarah Boone. Grant had maintained his innocence until a recent documentary about him called Control-Alt-Desire, in which he finally revealed the truth. It was this documentary that caught Victoria Goodwin's eye and prompted her to contact him. The two started a correspondence, and although there have not been a lot of details about the nature of their relationship, it does seem to have been a romantic relationship. And at some point, Victoria decided that she had had enough of her husband. She had stuck it out in the marriage for 2 years, and she was ready to take the next step and hire someone to remove her husband from the face of the earth. She turned to Grant to find someone to do this, and also asked him if he thought she was a terrible person for this. My guess is he said no, but I don't know. This plot of theirs was foiled during a search of Grant's cell by a correctional officer who found his contraband cell phone and went through it. Victoria Goodwin's husband, Aaron Goodwin, is the star of a reality show called Ghost Adventures, which I had never heard of until I heard of this. And by all accounts, he is a very affable guy who did not see this coming and has since filed for divorce. She's been arrested, and I will be keeping an eye on this dumpster fire. And if anything interesting happens, maybe we'll talk about it. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.